Okay, cool. You good?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, cool. Um, Let me kick off. Um, because every time we have sat down together, you got an energy about you, which is infectious. But more than that, when I listen to what you've done and who you are, it's really compelling. And I think um, I remember when you said you bought the worst football club in the country at 30 years old. I was like, what? Who does that? And so for me, it's about when you did that, what was in your head when you go and buy the worst club in the country? And I know there are some other stories behind that in terms of um, certain individuals who wanted to extract money from you, etc. Yeah.
The juicy bits of the book, yeah. Um, I think for me, I was a failed footballer. So as a young child, I always dreamed of being a footballer. I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, which is not a good fan to be at the moment with what's happening. But I signed for Sheffield United, quite ironic, at the age of, I was about 10, 11 years of age. And I went up until 16 and I thought I was going to be a professional footballer. That's what I thought. All the noise was made around me. I believed the hype. And then at 16, I got released. And at 16, the release from Sheffield United, it wasn't a phone call in those days or a player care plan. It was like, you ain't got a YTS as it was in those days. And the 2 or 3 years that led after that, I was in a bad place. The rejection from it, I
Okay.
was a bit naughty, akin. It's hard to believe I know, a bit naughty, got into trouble, doing lots of different things which I couldn't possibly repeat, and really lost my way. And a long story short, at 90, my dear late stepmom gave me an opportunity to go and work for a company. I think she felt sorry for me, or maybe just to keep me out of prison. I think that's why she probably did it. And I had a great 5 or 6 years there, learning how to audit and compliance in education. I was something as dry as an auditor once. But what that enabled me to do was to get a real understanding of education. And I was rubbish at school.
Uh-huh.
I went to school for football, rugby, basketball, cricket. That's why I went
Yeah.
to and the social side, not for the education. But I got a real love for education. On the back of that, I set my first company when I was 25, an audit company called SRF that went on for 20 odd years, and at 27 Life Skills, which was an education company working, as we said before, Peckham, Bethnal Green, the East End, South London, and working with young people. And and what that gave me was something I was really passionate about. So I was helping kids who were like me at 16, who were lost, who weren't
Yeah.
very good at school. And later in life, I think I shared this, I got diagnosed with ADHD, which probably
Yeah.
explains a lot. And I got that at a very late diagnosis, which has been a blessing to actually understand some things and how my brain works. But what that did, those businesses, they gave me a bit of money. Not millions of pounds, but they gave me a bit of money. And I was sat in my flat in London watching Sky Sports. And Jeff Stelling, the anchorman for Sky Sports Saturday, East Sterling, oh, they've scored a goal. And it was like this joke, this sympathy. Oh, East Sterling have scored, or East Sterling have lost 7-0 again. And I thought, who on earth are this club? Who are this little football club that are absolutely horrendous? You know, they got 8 points one season. I think they got 12 points the season after, only won 2 games. And I just looked at the website, and as you'd expect, the website was defunct. You know, it not being updated for months and months. So I thought, do you know what? I mean, I've never lost the love for football, but my 20s was taken up by building businesses and doing a lot of partying and having a good time. I still played
Uh-huh.
in marshes and stuff like that when I was in London. I thought I'm going to get involved. I thought I'm going to found this football club and I'm going to get involved. And not by way of sponsoring a shirt or a player's, but I'm going to get involved because this is going to be a real challenge and it's a crazy thing to do. So I phoned up Les Thompson, the dear late Les Thompson, who thought I was absolutely bonkers. And I flew up and met them. And that's how the story started. So I'd never been to Scotland before in my life, which was evident because we went to Glasgow Prestwick Airport instead of Glasgow, which is near air than Glasgow. So it cost us an arm and a leg in a taxi to get there. Absolutely chucking it down. You know, I'd never forget that day. And trying to get in the ground was a challenge. And that was back in 2006. I just turned 31. And yeah, it all started from there. So it was really a passion, I suppose, of football. I've always loved the underdog.
Yeah.
I've always been a bit of an underdog, you know, the thick kid at school, uh,
Uh-huh.
very well, but I love sport. I was good at sport. And I thought, you know what? this is just like it's a bit of a crazy thing to do, which I didn't think at the time. I do now. I mean, it was a very crazy thing to do. But I thought as a football romantic, I thought I'm gonna go and help this football club. So that's how it started.
And were you successful?
Yeah, in terms of the club, yeah. I mean, we had 4 incredible years. My first year, I wasn't. I went onto the board, but I didn't own it. So I bought the shares off the previous owner when I was 32. So I had 3 full years as owner, if you like. And the first year, we had to finish off bottom of the Scottish Football League. Otherwise, we're getting kicked out. They'd had enough of East Stirling being the whipping boys. In fact, the Sun newspaper ran a headline. The nickname's the Shire, East Stirlingshire. And the headline was "What a bag of shire" when they got beat again. I mean, the press were brutal. They were just a laughing stock. And the Scottish Football League had had enough. So my first full season, we drew Glasgow Rangers in the Scottish Cup, which was incredible. Gave us a bit of money, and we had a great start. And we won 6 games on the bounce. And Sky Sports came to cover us. They came up to Falkirk, the crew and everything, to cover us. Because this was like, even Jeff Stelling was like, "Oh, this is amazing. East Stirling won 6 games." And
Wow.
but as you know, with football, it kicks you in the teeth. And went on this horrible run. We couldn't win for weeks and months. We drew Rangers, got a bit of money, and unfortunately had to part company with the manager at the time. It was just too much for him, as it would be most people
Yeah.
managing Stirlingshire. So I brought in a fella called Jim McAnally, who played for Cloughie at Forest. Incredible fella. Still in touch with him now. What a lovely human. And he got 8 games to keep us off the bottom. And it came down to the final game against Montrose. So 27 minutes in, Davy King, our centre back, again, I'm still in touch with, own goal, top corner, like, oh, here we go, 1-0 down. And it was also our last game at the stadium at First Park because we had to move out of First Park. So it was like we got his last game at First Park, could have been his last game in the Scottish Football League, 1-0 down. And then Andy Rogers scores on 40 minutes. It's 1-1, game on. 550 fans are in there, all going, big crowd for us, all going crackers. And we ended up winning 3-1. And we finished second bottom. And we didn't get relegated. And akin,
Wow.
the grown men were crying on the pitch. It meant that much. They'd had 5 years of finishing bottom, being a laughing stock. We'd had a season where we'd been to Rangers. Yeah, we lost 6-0, but we played in front of 34,000 people, which was incredible. And we finished second bottom. And then that was really the catalyst for the next 2 seasons where we finished in the playoffs. And we got into the semi-finals. We got another Scottish Cup run, played Dundee United, lost to St Mirren 6-3 at home. We were 3-0 down, got it back to 3-all. And then, we had a few giant killings. And at the end of, you look at the 4 year period, yes, they were no longer a laughing stock. And in those 4 years, we actually made money, which is unheard of, because we ran it really tight. But what it did, it galvanized a fan base who were probably not many of them, but the best fans I've ever come across in my life. To go and watch your team every week getting pumped 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 takes some doing. Incredible fans. And yeah, it came to a time I had to move on, for a variety of reasons. And I sold the club to Les Thompson, the CEO, for £1 on the condition that he sold it to the fans, so it became the first fan-owned football club in Scotland.
Wow. That is so visionary,
Yeah, I think I made a lot of it up as I went along, to be fair.
which is
But
fine. That's
yeah,
but that's the truth of entrepreneurship, isn't it? The truth of being an entrepreneur is that you're treading a path that nobody's trod.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it doesn't,
so,
doesn't
people come up with all of these formulas, but you're doing something that's never been done before. I mean, you went to a football club that was the laughing stock, yeah, that no hopers, 550 fans was an amazing day. And you must have had such an impact upon the community.
it was incredible, and to see fans who had had so much hurt, the previous owner, for people that buy the book believe they'll see how the previous owner was. And he didn't care for the football club. He didn't care for the fans. He was about asset stripping and selling the ground, which is, by the way, still not sold. So I think there's a thing in life called karma, isn't there, Kin?
Yeah.
And the joy that it brought them. And since releasing the book just over a month ago, and the East Stirlingshire fans that have got back in touch, and Sophie Duncan, whose dad Bill sadly passed away, he's probably our most famous fan. And she sent me a message. Do you know what? It didn't happen, Spen. We didn't get promotion, but you gave us the best 4 years. Now, when I get stuff like that, 15 or so years on, that makes me feel A, very emotional, but B, thankful that I did it because it made an impact on these people. And to go and watch East Sterling shirt during my tenure there, you weren't going to a game thinking you were going to lose. We had a good team, a really good team, and we played some brilliant football. We had a great manager, and that just seeing the smiles on the faces. There's one game we played against Livingston in the Scottish Cup, so we were in the third division.
Uh-huh.
During the first one, I took my late dad Roger up. I mean, he just thought, yeah, whatever, son. Just he was used to me. Just get on with it. Scottish club, yeah, whatever. And there's a moment there, and we beat Livingston 2-1 with big giant killing. And all these Stirlingshire fans are doing the can down the front of the stadium, led by Mad Bill, Sophie's dad, who was to turn up with a carrier bag full of whatever he could get from the local off license. And that my dad was in tears, and just that
Really
moment with my dad was an incredible reason to do it as well. So we had
amazing.
lots of fun. It was brilliant.
That's amazing. Um, I think what you epitomize is this, it can be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything's possible. And I think that's what really kind of drew me to engage with you because you don't understand, you don't play by the rules.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that's you don't play by the rules. You understand? Because if you played by the rules, you would never bought East Stirlingshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have done many of the things that you've done.
Yeah.
What's behind that?
I think I've always been a bit of a rebel.
Uh-huh.
I've not been one for authority. I'm sure as my old teachers will attest, and like to be different. And I think when I look at life skills, the education company that I had, I basically said, right, I'm going to London because nobody in Yorkshire's going to back me with this idea I've got. So I went to London, went to Peckham first, had a meeting, didn't quite work out, and ended up in Bethnal Green. And when I set life skills up, I couldn't afford to rent in London because of the prices. So I slept on a camp bed in the office for 8 months. I was prepared to make sacrifices because I believed that even though I wasn't a qualified teacher, I had such a passion for helping young people that I could do it. And I wasn't going to let anybody stop me. So the people in Yorkshire, my fellow northern colleagues, no, it won't work. All right, then I'm going to London. And that was it. Bump. I'm gone. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw everything into it. And those early days of life skills back in 2002, the internet was just starting. It wasn't as slick as what it is now. I used to
Yeah.
research all these youth. I'd be up, till 10, 11 o'clock at night in my office and camp bed. I mean, thankfully I had a shower next door, so it wasn't too bad. And then at 6 a.m. or the underground would start on the Bethnal Green line behind me and wake me up. But I was just absolutely committed to do it because people said it couldn't be done, which was a great thing for me. People doubted me because I always had a bit of a point to prove. And I think why I maybe think differently, and like I mentioned earlier, the recent diagnosis with
Yeah.
ADHD, I think that explains a lot. Because the neuroscience, without getting too deep in it, but if you have ADHD, you have a lack of dopamine. So what happens? People with
Okay.
ADHD are generally risk takers, and they do crazy things like buy football clubs in Scotland, which raises the level of dopamine. So it's a neurological thing as well. And since having the diagnosis, I've become and I've you get obsessive, which I am, and you have hyper focus. So if you're really focused on things, you have something called hyper focus, which means you just go for it. But then sometimes nothing else matters. So you just focus on one thing, which can be a blessing, but again can be a negative as well.
Massive, yeah, it can be a
So I
massive
think
problem.
so I think having that diagnosis, I think that's really helped me understand why I am like I am. And there's all you're shaped by your parents, aren't you, in your childhood, and there's many different
Hmm.
things. But I suppose that leads to me doing, working in the music industry, working in the boxing industry, working in rugby, now doing hockey, something a sport I know nothing about, because that's a challenge, because I know nothing about it. So I've got to learn the rules. I've got to learn that hockey is very different to football. Similar games, but different types of people and, the class system where they come from and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
but I generally take on challenges. Stockport County, when I went there as vice chairman, that was a club that had come out of administration, was on the verge of bankruptcy. Not as popular with the Stockport fans as MD Sterling ones, but we had a lot of tough decisions to make. Otherwise, the club would not exist today. But I wasn't afraid to make those decisions because I knew longer term that the club, I made mistakes at King Crikey. I made a lot of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah.
But I always had good intentions to keep the club where it is. And now Stockport County is flying now. We're top of League One, I would imagine, this season. So where does it come from? Maybe because of the way my brain's programmed,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and also my late dad, who, if he was diagnosed now, he'd be absolutely cast iron ADHD because that's how he was. Went bankrupt a few times, but bounced back, always
Yep.
bounced back. Uh,
Yep.
and he used to do, he was working printing, in carpets, in graphic design. If he didn't know how to do something, he'd learn. And I
I
picked that trait up.
yeah, I think I don't have the ADHD, but I see real alignment. There's something that yeah that we there's quite a lot we have in common
Yeah.
in terms of the drive, in terms of the level of risk that we're willing to take. Um, and so these journeys bring big highs, but they also bring big lows, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So for myself, my biggest low was being made homeless the day before my anniversary. No, I made bankrupt. Yeah, the day before my anniversary, which is not the best present to give to your wife. Yeah. And then I was made homeless with a family, and that to me was the lowest, one of the lowest points of my life. But it was in the moment. I remember the moment whereby we had to leave our house, and we had a decent living, so we were living a decent life, and it just all fell apart. And I remember we were put into this unit, and it was just like two rooms, and I remember my wife and my daughter just broke down. And it was in that moment, it was like a do or die moment. You understand? It literally was a do or die moment, yeah? Okay. So my question to you is like, what have been your do or die moments?
Yeah, we are so aligned in so many things in our life, again, it's scary. So, being made homeless.
Yeah.
So, I was 7 years of age. So, my mum and dad were together until I was seven. I have a sister, Sasha, who's a couple of years younger, far smarter,
Uh-huh.
brighter than me. And when I was seven, Sasha was five, my parents split up. Um, my dad was a bit of a boy and stuff, and he did his thing, and it didn't happen. But as well as them getting divorced and my dad becoming bankrupt for the first time, what we did, we actually lost our home.
Yeah.
So we were homeless at seven and five, and with my mum. My dad, yeah, listen, he was brilliant. We all have his faults. Sometimes he wasn't the best dad, sometimes he was amazing. But
Yeah.
uh, long story short, something had happened. My mum had signed something she shouldn't have, and we basically got kicked out of his house. So we had to go and live with my auntie for 6 months, thankfully, before we could find some accommodation. So again, then going from up until 7 years of age, holidays in Jamaica, which, going back in the early 1980s, you had to have a bit of dough to do.
That's big.
My dad drove an E-type Jag, and we had a bit of dough, and then it all went all
Yeah.
of us. And
Yeah.
then, so my dad was always around, and he had his troubles with business. He always tried to, but he was a good man. I'm not saying he was a bad dad. He was brought up in the children's home, so probably didn't
Yeah.
have the best role models himself anyway.
Yeah.
But from the age of seven, me, Sasha, and my mum Linda were a one-parent family. I was a free dinner kid, and I had to work. So from being 10 years of age, I had a paper round. 11 years of age, milk round. And then I finished that, then do the paper round. And some weeks I'd earn more money than my mum, who, bless her, was juggling lots of different jobs to
Amazing.
feed us, for me and my sister. And they're the things that they gave me resilience because as a
Yeah.
young child, I mean, Sasha doesn't remember much of it, which I'm thankful for, but I
Yeah.
remember their relationship, and it wasn't the best, and the divorce and being homeless and going from having a really nice line of getting a little Puck 50cc motorbike for Christmas when I was six. I was like, whoa, this is a great
Wow.
life. This is how it's going to
Yeah.
be. And boom,
Yeah.
gone, all gone.
Yeah.
And being a free dinner kid and having that. And I think one thing that strikes me or always resonates with me is standing in the queue for my grey free dinner token and thinking, when I have kids, they're not going to go through this. It's ain't going to happen to my kids. I wasn't too bad with it. It was distraught for my sister. Very pretty girl, very popular. We had to, queue up and just like beggars, easy food, and yeah. And those things, those early memories, and even though they weren't nice memories, they're what shape you. And my mum
Yeah.
is still alive, thankfully. She's 78 now. And she always apologizes for our childhood, me and my sister. I said, you know what? We had the best childhood ever because we didn't see much of you as a mum, but you were working. So you
Yeah.
inspired me and Sasha to have this work ethic. We didn't have anything. Nothing was laid on for us. So we had to work. And we had to go and do milk rounds 6 days a week, getting up at 3, 4 o'clock. Not Sasha, she did other things. These are the things that shaped us as human beings to be resilient. And more recently, I think of the side of, the loss of your parents, my dad and my stepmom, who was great to me, they've been tough times. But my education business, Life Skills, in 2022, after 20 years working with 22,000 young people, was shut down. I can't
Mm.
say too much about that, but think post office scandal. That happened.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was hard. And not just to me, to other people in the education sector. And I can't say too much about that. But my solicitor said to me, and I'll be candid, he said, I do not know how you're not hanging from a tree what they've done to you.
What?
That's what my solicitor said. It was brutal. I can't say too much, but
No
I,
problem. No
I
problem.
lost a business that I built that gave so many young people like me at 16 the opportunity to excel. That was heartbreaking. So when that happened in October 2022, it was when you're in it trying to save it, and I
Yep.
I got people from the House of Lords, the Secretary of State. I didn't hang back again because what happened was wrong. But sometimes you are taking on people you can't beat, uh,
Yep.
and that's what happened. So I had a choice: either I'm going to feel sorry for myself, or I'm going to get up the next morning and crack on. And there's only one decision to make.
Fun.
So what I did, I took 3 months off, and I was going to go into administration. It's still not solved 3 years on, but there you go. Um, and I had things to do for the administrators. I didn't need to do it, but I wanted to do it to make sure everything was in place
Yep.
because
Yep.
we got nothing to hide. We'd done nothing wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I took 3 months off. So I thought, what the bloody hell am I going to do? I don't want to run businesses anymore because, Life Skills was a great business. It was 150 people at any one time, times top 100 company, 9 times on the bounce, Ofsted grade two, except top company, eighth biggest independent training provider in England when it went. And I thought, do I need the stress of that
Woo.
again? So I thought, right, what shall I do? So I thought, well, I love coaching. I've done a bit of teaching at Life Skills, and I like helping young people. I've always helped young people. That's what I've done. So I thought I'll go and teach. So I put my CV in around the agencies at Christmas, and I was having some time off, and just because it had been a pretty brutal experience.
Uh-huh.
One
Uh-huh.
thing happened in a week, it had gone for months and months and months.
I know the experience.
Yeah, and so it got to January, and after Christmas, and I thought, right, so day one, back at work. Oh, well, there's no life skills anymore. Right. So I sat in the kitchen, just away from home, and I was like, right, phone's not rang. Shit, am I unemployable? It's like, what? I thought maybe I've got loads of masters and all this. I thought, crikey, I'll be all right. And then nothing happened on the first day back. And the second day back, I started getting emails,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
teaching and University Academy 2, 92 were one of those as a temporary lecturer. I thought, and I've always admired Gary Neville, and I love the.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've always liked Man United and Gary Neville. So I went there for an interview, and he went, "Well," he says, "Right, you start next week." I thought, "Yeah, all right." And I've been there nearly 3 years now, and progressed to a course leader and doing a job akin that I don't just like, I love my
Love
job.
it. Yeah, I know.
And it's probably the lowest paid job I've had in the last 25 years, but you know what? It's the best job I've had. I absolutely love what I do, and you know this from the
I
conversation.
know. Absolutely.
Because I'm working in sport every day. I'm not in sport because that's not always the best in it, but I'm on the periphery working with that's Lancashire, Man United, Salford, whoever it may be, but helping young people go into a sector I'm really passionate about. So probably a long-winded answer, but yeah, I think the bumps in the road make you. And if it's a smooth, it's all the curling parent analogy. If you've got a smooth pathway for your kids, when they get to 19 and something goes wrong, they can't handle it.
Absolutely.
Me and my wife want our kids to fail, and that doesn't sound right, but we want them to fail. We want them to have that
Absolutely.
resilience early on. So, yeah, lots of different factors, I suppose.
Yeah. I think I've got two things that I will share. I think when we were homeless, we were in a homeless unit for a while. And I remember my daughter she was literally preparing for her exams and she was like working on the floor. There was no desk, etc. And I looked at her, she looked at me and she just went, "It is what it is." Yeah. And at that moment, the resilience I knew that this, yeah, had was incredible. Yeah. And I also look at my son. He had his escape room. And it was the best escape room in London. This guy took a empty shell, raised money, created an escape room, which was on TripAdvisor's 780 in London. Yeah, when he first started, he got it to number one
Wow.
for fun and games in London. So you're competing against every other attraction. He got it to number one in London, yeah? Okay. But it didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the achievement was huge. But the bump, yeah, when it hits you, yeah. And I felt it for him. Because you know you want to take the pain from your children, but you can't. But also, one of the things I've said, and I agree with you, I said the biggest, for me, there's two gifts you can give your children. One is God, the other one is struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if your children have no ability to struggle, to understand struggle, to be able to overcome struggle, yeah, okay, I believe as parents is that you've actually failed.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and I understand the sentiment that you want the best for your children, yeah, okay. But the best for your children is not giving them everything. In fact, it's potentially the opposite.
It is, and parents do it with good intentions because they
Yep,
want the best for their kids, but they're causing more damage. So my
absolutely.
middle daughter Francesca, she's 13 now, and she's in drama and theatre, and she goes for lots of auditions and she gets rejected. That's good. That's a good thing. She
Yeah,
gets done, but she gets rejected from a lot.
yeah,
But she knows how to deal with rejection because she's going to get that in her life. My eldest
absolutely.
daughter, when she's doing trials for hockey or whether it's national or regional, whatever, she or netball, she gets rejected. So
Yeah,
they're learning to cope with this at an early age and reframe it. All right, yeah, but it's the next challenge now. It
absolutely,
happens.
absolutely.
And
And
somebody
I think that's
rejecting you
so
doesn't mean you're
crucial.
bad. It means it's just a coach's opinion. A
Yeah.
different coach might have a different opinion, but get used to that because that's the world of sport and that's the world of theatre and drama and so on. And I think it's so important. And not that me and Emma, my wife, we cheer if they get rejected. We give them a hug and stuff. But I thought, all right, that's good because everything's too easy when you become an adult and things go wrong. That's why people struggle in adulthood, or one of the reasons.
So do you think if we were to look at because one of the things I spend a lot of my time is in working with leaders, yeah, okay, and I think for me sometimes I look at a lot of leadership courses that are kind of put out there, and I look at them and thinking this ain't gonna help you, yeah, because there's almost this sense that if you do 2 + 2 + 2, you're going to get this. You understand? And actually, leadership is not like that. It's complicated, it's complex, it's messy, it is unpredictable, and all of these things. Yeah, and I think that's why I think some of the best leaders are entrepreneurs because they know how to make something from nothing. They know how to make decisions in the moment, etc. Whereas a lot of leaders in industry, I think, and this is my opinion, I think that they have been given a very shiny toy persona of what leadership is, and it is very far from the truth.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think the big thing about leadership is having emotional intelligence
Uh-huh.
and looking after your people. That's the
Yeah,
most important thing. So when I had life skills, we got up to 1,000, 1,200 students per year. And people would say, well, they're the most important thing. No, they're not. The most important thing are all the people that are part of life skills team. They're
yeah,
the most important. And we didn't pay a lot of money compared to colleges, but we retained a lot of staff because we had great parties. We used to have a summer party and go up and down the Thames in fancy dress and do ridiculous things like that. But we had a purpose, a clear purpose, creating brighter futures. So any member of staff that walked through the door, they knew they were there to create brighter futures. We had a cause.
yeah,
I think leaders, you've got to develop a cause, something that people buy into. So UA92 is perfect for me
yeah,
because not that we just work with people that aren't necessarily ready for a degree. I mean, we have students who have got 3 A's, 4 A's, a variety, but really opening up the door to those young people who normally wouldn't get into another institution. That really sits with me in my values as a human being.
yeah,
Being freed in a kid, for example, that's that I connect with that. So I think leaders have to connect with people. And the best way to connect with people is to get to know people. And not just know how many kids you got when they're birthday. No, really get to know people.
yeah.
What do they stand? What are their values? What makes them happy? What do they want their workplace to look like? But we get all these shiny qualifications, and I've got masters and stuff, but mini MBAs and masters in this. That doesn't mean you're a good leader.
Definitely not.
It helps in terms of your knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
going there, taking the risk, making the mistakes, sometimes making some bloody horrendous mistakes. I once had a nightclub in Sheffield. Talk about losing money, crikey, And I don't think I've lost any more money if I tried in a year. But I went into that with an arrogance. Oh yeah, we've done it in Ibiza and Marbella. We'll do it in Sheffield. Stupid idea. But
Yeah.
learning from those mistakes and as a leader, I think showing humility
Uh-huh.
that you are going to make mistakes as well. And I'll digress slightly. When I do work for the FA, so I coach about 150 coaches a year for the FA, UEFA, and when I coach players as well, I always open up by saying I have delivered thousands of coaching sessions, and not one has ever been perfect. And in every single one, I've made mistakes. And in every single coaching session, there's things that I can do a lot better. And if you have that humility, because it's true,
Yeah.
but you have that humility, you think, oh, right, yeah, it's okay to make mistakes. And you talk about
Absolutely.
psychological safety, that people feel safe and that they have that trust as well. And we can have all the words on the wall that we have about values and purpose. It's your actions. It's how you behave. When the shit hits the fan, how are you going to look after your people? So going back to life skills, when we were in dialogue, let's say, with the government, it was like April to October. So it was a 6, 7 month period, all this was going on. I didn't take a wage for that 6, 7 months because I knew that maybe this isn't going to end well. So I had to make sure that I had enough money to cover all my staff before me. There's a book by
Hmm.
Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. I don't know if you've ever read it at all.
Yep. No, I know. That's my philosophy.
Yeah. I put my team
Yeah.
before me. And I could have took my money out and still continued,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
know if this doesn't go, look, I need to have enough money to make sure everyone's looked after for a few months, which I did, right down pretty much to the penny before it went on the 14th of October 2022. So that's leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, even right now, we're going for a tough time, and I think it is really imperative that that ethos in terms of your people come first. Yeah. It is so imperative because I've seen over the years is that when you have that ethos, they will go anywhere and do anything for you. Yeah, because it's very relational. Um, and so therefore, one of the things I think is that when I look around, I know there's real complexities in different industries because one of the things I work across different industries. So one day I'm working in hospitality and I'm kind of leaning into some really complex thought processes in terms of structures and systems, and it kind of intrigues me. And then the next day I'm working in an insurance company with the exec, and then the next day I'm working in maybe rail. Yeah, and
Yeah,
so I'm trying to understand all this complex, but my responsibility is how do I optimize these people as human beings, first of all?
yeah,
Yeah. And that's the common thing. And like one of the things, I think for me, one of the important things is that what I bring to people is I say I give leaders space and time to think and to talk,
yeah,
because often they don't have that.
yeah,
Because there's this persona that we have to deliver, perform, and it means that we're head down, we're knocking out emails, etc., etc., etc. But actually, one of the things we need to do is to take time and just like think.
yeah. I absolutely agree. And before we started recording, we're just speaking about I'd been away in Spain and the amount of steps that I do and miles
Yeah,
I do and walk. And a dear friend of mine, somebody called Chris Brindley, who's a top leader, probably one of the best presenters I've seen this country's produced, incredible human being. And I've got to know Chris a lot over the last few years. And he does something where he goes on a Friday and he'll go and sit in a cafe, greasy spoon cafe, get a brew, bacon butty with his pad, turns his phone off, and he just sits and he thinks,
yeah,
pop idea. And I use walking for that. Something I've tried to introduce in my team at UA Night. I'm not sure everyone does it, to be honest, but I say, give an hour on a Friday thinking time. Turn
yeah,
everything off, just think.
yeah.
And give yourself that space to think. And when I go walking, like this morning, I've been out, did 10,000 steps before 8 a.m. I live near the countryside. I'm out, sun was shining.
Yeah,
Well, as I'm walking, I've got my phone, but idea pop, right? What about this? If I'm sat at a laptop or I'm on the phone, or I don't get that opportunity to think and be creative.
it's all right.
Keep walking is, sometimes I have a podcast or some Oasis at the moment, generally, if I'm listening to stuff, because we're all big Oasis fans again. But it's having that thinking time. And Chris inspired me to do that many years ago because he coached me,
Okay,
mentored me, and I thought, what a great idea. It took me a while. Well, I'm too busy to have thinking time. That's the best time. You think
absolutely.
because that's where you get your ideas. And I think as a leader, generally you're under a lot of pressure. You've got results to drive. If you're working for people higher up, they're quite demanding. But my advice to anybody is just have an hour, even if it's an hour a week. I'm lucky
Yeah.
I create a lot of I aim for so many steps a day. So I'm out, I'm walking, or if I'm in my office, I've got a little step machine and I'll just think as I'm walking. Getting exercise and that thinking time is absolutely critical because it helps you develop and you get ideas you normally wouldn't. It's like when you're in the shower, oh, boom, idea. Yeah, because you're
Yeah.
relaxed.
I
And
think what's really important is especially because I think again one of the things with leadership is this, yeah. Um, for me, the real test of leadership is the hard times
yeah,
when you're thinking, Jesus, how are we gonna do this? Yeah. And it's at those points in particular that you need to think. And normally what happens is that we're trying to just respond, respond, respond. We don't do the level of thinking. I remember I was reading a book about, I think it was Washington. Who was it? It was one of the presidents, Lincoln. Lincoln. This guy fought. This guy would take time. I remember there was some like civil war was raging, and the Confederate Army were maybe a distance from their location.
yeah,
He went for a ride with his son.
yeah,
It's a team of rivals. The book, A Team of Rivals. The reason I picked it up is because Obama said this is the one book that I took into the Oval House with him.
right.
Yeah. And so I
Keep,
thought, let me
keep it
read
right.
this book as well. Yeah, okay. And when I looked at that, the fact that this man in the height of pressure, because it doesn't get much, yeah,
Yeah,
he had to think.
yeah,
And I think for me, one of the things I've had to do is that during the tough times, yeah, where your gut is, you got to think because in when you can, because often what happens is that when you're in the midst of real challenges, you're very microscopic in terms of your thinking because you're looking up to the problem face on, yeah. But actually, that thinking time, that walking time, allows you to become much more telescopic, doesn't it? And
yeah.
actually see the bigger picture and see bigger opportunities for solutions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so cool. There's work with Daniel Kahneman, which I'm sure you're familiar with, System One and System Two thinking. So if you're
Hmm.
a professional footballer, you could, when you're playing, you can only look at System One thinking, which is reactive, because you don't have time to think playing football. But in business, System Two, we do have time to think
Yes.
generally.
Yes.
There's exceptions to the rule, and use that time wisely and think, but also speak to people and get different opinions. I think that's really important, as is the diversity of the people around you as well thinking different, culturally as well, different gender. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment, I'm chair of Doncaster Hockey,
Uh-huh.
the AGM, and we had an AGM. There's about 35 people in there. And I was going to be made chair. I knew that. I didn't realize I'd have to hold a meeting straight after they dropped that one off me. So I didn't have much time to think about it, but I got through it. And they said to me, what did you think to the AGM? I said, it was really interesting. I said, what was really interesting? Everyone's white British. And they went, we didn't realize that. I says, no, it was my first observation. So, where is the diversity in the thinking process and people from different religions, different parts of the world? Doncaster, I wouldn't say it's the most multicultural of places in England, but there are pockets. So, that's part of I
Absolutely.
think, when you have time thinking, but try and get different perspectives from people with different backgrounds, and also, of course, neurodiversity, which I'm incredibly passionate about now. People that are neurodiverse as well. That's the key to thinking, and getting different and get people around you who are going to challenge your thinking. One of my mentors in football is a fellow called Raymond Verheyen, a Dutch coach educator. For me, he is the best coach educator in world football. Incredible. And
Really.
he can be a little bit like Marmite. He's a bit controversial because he says what he thinks and he's Dutch. And, that's how some of our Dutch friends are. He's an extreme sometimes, but he's
Uh-huh.
the best. He has challenged my thinking so much over the last 8 years. It's incredible. And I think about the game of football completely differently. So
Really.
all the stuff I had in my brain, how football works, he's pretty much switched it.
Really.
It's helped me become a better coach. But when you go on his courses, I'm sorry, this is what happens with ADHD, you start digressing a bit and
That's
bouncing.
cool. That's cool.
But you go on his courses, they're like the Navy SEALs of football coach education. So you'll be there at 8 in the morning. You could be going till 2, 3 the following morning, 5 days on the bounce. It's proper, it's top, absolute top. But that helps build resilience as well. Because if you're at a World Cup, you might have to do that. But I suppose the point is
Ooh,
having
interesting.
people like Raymond, he's actually doing a course in England. He's coming on the 17th of October, 15th and 17th. Incredible human being. But having people like that And he's a bit, I'll be honest, when I first started, I'm not so scared of him now, a little bit. When I first met, like, crikey, this guy, he's like, whoa. But he is good. And I pay every year, I've not been this summer, the last 8 years, to go abroad and spend a week with him and other coaches from all over the world.
Really?
And that, again, the diversity working with coaches from Colombia or Africa or Australia,
Uh-huh.
wherever, all in one room, different thinking all the time. And I suppose provoking your thinking and challenging some of the thoughts you had. Not just about football, just about things in general as well. So I
That's
think that's
so
really
interesting.
important as a leader that you have diversity around you. Rebel Ideas, Matthew Said, wonderful book. If anyone's not read it, but that shows the power of diversity. So I think your own time to think, give yourself that space, but get people around you who are going to challenge you, but who are diverse. I think that's the key.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think it's really interesting because obviously, I work in the diversity space to some extent, and I think I look at this space, and it was a space I never wanted to get into, if I'm being honest. The reason being is this, yeah, as a black man, you don't want to get boxed into this is what you guys do. You understand? Okay, so I always avoided it, but there's so much power in terms of when you see organizations and you think it's really interesting. We've done a lot of work in sport, and what we see is this desire to hold on to the past. Yeah. And the past has been mediocre.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't understand in a industry where performance is key. Yeah. And you're looking for the best talent out there that you refuse to widen your lens.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I
Why?
can, there's an
What?
example there. If you look at the number of Asian footballers playing
Yep.
professional football, so you're not telling me in places like Leicester or Bradford that they're not really good Asian footballers. But
That's
how many Asian footballers can you count on one hand?
it's mad.
Everyone goes to go with Michael Chopra. In fact, Chris Dolby, who I played football with many years ago, was the first Asian footballer to play for Rotherham United. He's my age, he's 50 years of age now. Why is that?
No, no.
That just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And and I think when you say mediocre, I think you've been very kind about how it's been
Yeah.
before this because it has been incredibly poor and still is. People are trying to affect change, but there's some people that probably,
Things
dinosaurs, as I call
yeah.
them, probably need to retire and move out of the sport. And that's again going back to UA92, why our job there is so important because we're
Yeah.
educating future sports leaders. And this is what I say. I'm too old to change it. I can maybe help a little bit. You're the next generation where we have more equality and it's your responsibility. And that's a big thread through everything we do. And I suppose that's why I love the job so much that we see that and leave them with those skills.
No, I love it. Um, so in terms of what would you say are some of the key lessons that you learned taken from your career? If you were to sum it up, I know you've written the book, yeah, and I've got to buy the book and read it, yeah. But if you were to sit down at dinner, yeah, with a group of leaders or aspiring leaders, yeah, and you wanted to disrupt their thinking, not just for the sake of disrupting, but to show them there's a better way, what would that be about?
I think I suppose it depends on who the leaders are and what they're like. But one thing, well, there's a few things. First one, if you really believe you can achieve something, go for it. Just do
Yeah,
it. Don't procrastinate. And I think one lesson I'd learned, I'd probably prepare a bit better instead of doing it off the cuff and taking probably risks I shouldn't. But just give it a go.
yeah,
And especially for those leaders that, if you're in your late teens or your 20s, early 30s, and you don't have the commitments of a family, that stopped me taking as many risks having four children and a wife because there's no way I'd do what I did in my 20s.
yeah,
You're 20, you can go and fail. You can still fail now at 50. I can still fail and then come back in. I've done that. I failed 3 years ago when the business
yeah,
was done there. That constitutes a failure. But you can bounce back from it. And I think it's having that life's not fair.
yeah.
Things are going to happen to you that you probably don't deserve. But you have two choices. You either sulk about it or you can get on with it. And that's what you have to do. So I think it's having that resilience and that you are going to have, as a leader, you're going to have some pretty horrific days. But generally, you'll have a lot better days than horrific days. But that's the job of a leader. Otherwise, just go and get a job, do your 9 to 5, get a nice salary and have a nice life and don't have the pressure. And for some people, that's what they want, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want to be a leader, you got to stand up. When the chips are down, you've got to stand up and you've got to be the number one. When there's a big mistake or a cock up, you're accountable. If something goes really well, it's your staff. That's
Yeah.
important and making people feel valued, really. And I suppose the other one as well is to, I mean, I started running businesses at 25, which I had no idea how to lead, no idea. And as I grew, not that I was horrible at all in my 20s, but I just was a bit clueless. Just
Hmm.
winged it basically. But
Absolutely.
I learned that, believing in people. And some people that work for me at Life Skills, started off as, a £20,000 a year work placement officer. One of them ended up running the company on 6 figures, and giving people the opportunity to grow. Uh,
Yeah.
and don't bullshit them and tell them they're going to be something they're not, but help people on the way. And there's so much more satisfaction in helping people than in receipt of it. Sometimes we need people to help us. And I think that's probably the third thing is that if you do need help, don't be afraid to reach out to people.
Mm.
That's been one of my mistakes in the past because I have a lot of pride and sometimes see me as, oh, you don't need any help, Spen, but sometimes we do need help. I was in Spain the last couple of weeks. I had something on my brain. I was thinking, oh, how do I deal with this? So I phoned Chris Brindley, and said, Chris, can I have 10 minutes of your time? I'd like your advice on this. This is my train of thought. What do you think? And he gave me a different perspective,
Mm.
and his was better than mine.
Hmm.
I needed that because I was thinking one route, and he said, "Oh, about this route." I thought, oh, I didn't think of that. And
Yeah,
again, when we
absolutely.
talk about thinking and consulting and getting different viewpoints. So I suppose that, getting different perspectives, looking after your people, and if you really believe in something strong enough, go for it. And I suppose the other thing as well is do the right thing, not always the popular thing,
Definitely.
which happened to me in my football career at a club where I did the right thing, highlighting something within that club, which other people ignored. It wasn't a popular thing. And did it affect me, I suppose, in terms of my football and coaching? Probably.
Yeah.
But I sleep at night knowing I'd raised this and I'd gone for what I believe wasn't right. Not just my values, but how society should be and how people are treated. So yeah, a few things there, I suppose.
Superb. Wow. Good conversation.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's gone pretty quick, that.
Yeah. That was a good conversation, sort of thing. So we could easily do a part two of this, couldn't we?
Yeah, why not? We'll see what
Okay.
people think. I think, oh, they're a load of old crap, them too. I think, hey, they're pretty good.
Okay. We can stop recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
So
was good.
I enjoyed that. It's